Right, where are we at with the post office? You know, people still hold in the Royal Mail, people hold a place in their hearts for these two institutions, but it feels like they're both getting quite a public kicking at the moment.
Well, first of all, the two institutions, unfortunately, were split many years back when the government decided to privatise Royal Mail. And neither of the two institutions can really work effectively separately. So, you know, we'd love to see Royal Mail and the Post Office come back together again. I don't think the sort of things that have happened with the Horizon scandal would have probably happened if the two were closer together. But crucially, they both need each other to build a successful future. So, look, the key debate at the moment is obviously where Ofcom's report, which was unfortunately leaked over the weekend in a very unprofessional way. I think the government's response seems to have almost killed the report now. But what we're looking for is a company that wants to engage with its workforce on how it grows the business in the future. And there are so many assets to Royal Mail. The debate always goes to, well, you know, let's see how we can, you know, we're losing money. Well, that's because they've never had a proper growth strategy. And I've got to say, Ofcom have contributed massively to the decline in profits of Royal Mail. They've allowed profitable bulk mail to be hived off by competitors. Now, not a lot of your viewers know this, but actually Royal Mail last year, the revenue from letters, packets and the parcels that go through the USO was £3.7 billion. So there is a platform there. What we've got to do is come up with ideas with the company to see whether or not we can expand the role of postal workers, whether we can offer services that are much more tailored to the local needs of businesses so that we can start to see ways of using Royal Mail to grow local economies, and whether Royal Mail's social value, which is immense, which happens on a daily basis, whether we can utilise that in a way that actually supports local communities in a much better way. We believe that's possible. That should be the starting point of the debate, not where Ofcom are coming from.
Dave, you and I often disagree, but I'm with you 100% here. And do you not suspect, actually, that Royal Mail wants to kill letter delivery? That's why they keep putting up the price. What is it, £1.25 for a standard sized letter, £1.95 for a larger letter? So many people I know this year said we simply can't afford to send a Christmas card this year because it's too expensive.
I think, Andrew, the honest truth is that there's been a succession of people who have led the business who have not got a clue about how you grow a business. So if you look at the assets of Royal Mail, which is a presence in every community, which is postal workers who are trusted more than any other delivery workers. No one ever sits down and engages with the union, engages with workers directly on how we can grow the business. What they always start from the point of is, as you said, is a cycle of decline. And we can't underestimate here the impacts of privatisation on that and the impacts of Ofcom's own policies. If you look back, Ofcom have actually taken money away from Royal Mail by giving it to the competitors in the bulk mail market, which is still very profitable in the UK. They've allowed those competitors to utilise Royal Mail's networks, almost halving, and in some cases taking away, huge amounts of annual profit. And then they come along and say, oh, and by the way, we've got to cut the service even more. So I think you're right. There's been a strategy for years here, which is about running the company into the ground. And it's a real shame that is where this debate is starting again.
But you touched on the importance of how it's a really important community service, Dave, isn't it, the Royal Mail? And a lot of older people, they want a delivery every day. They want to be able to post their letters. They want to be able to post their cards to their friends and send letters. And if the Royal Mail are allowed, if this is allowed to wither on the vine on a Saturday, the next thing you know, it'll be a 3-day service.
Well, our key concern, to be perfectly honest with you, was that we think that the report was a sham. We think there are people on the Royal Mail board. There was certainly the previous CEO and the management team. Most of them have gone now. They were certainly of a view that they wanted to get to a 3-day service. We think Ofcom we're really driving at that aim. And that's a major concern because that would destroy Royal Mail.
Dave, let me tell you what Royal Mail have said. They said it is simply not sustainable to maintain a delivery network built for 20 billion letters when we are now only delivering 7 billion. They said we've been consistent in saying the need for reform is urgent to ensure a modern and sustainable universal service. What do you make of that?
Well, I think there's some truth in the fact that if you want to sustain a service that's important to the public, you have to create the products and the services that go through it that are relevant to people going forward. We have no issue with that. Our concern is that the very people who are saying that to you never come forward with plans to grow the top line.
Presumably,
it's always waiting for politicians or Ofcom to come up with ways of cutting back all the time.
Presumably the shareholders, Dave, sorry to interrupt you, but I want to read another. Presumably the shareholders are also taking a massive cut to their pay, of course, for a business like this. It's not just the postal workers themselves.
Well, look, the shareholders benefited at a time when Royal Mail needed to invest in the company, invest in the workforce, when the company previous CEO, Andrew knows this debate very well, the previous CEO gave away over £700 million to the shareholders and left the workforce having to battle out for a pay rise. So they've made some terrible decisions along the way. There are some encouraging signs. I'm going to be honest with the new CEO of Royal Mail, who's cleared out a lot of the old management team and brought in some new people. But genuinely, we need to have a debate across the UK about how we can utilise the assets of Royal Mail. I was listening to a debate this morning from the greeting card companies who were saying that their business is actually growing. Now, surely there's a way of connecting with those companies to give much tailored service. We've put ideas forward in the past on how you expand the role of postal workers. Actually, the agreement that we reached with Royal Mail on, the need for changing, modernising the network, also committed Royal Mail to maintaining the universal service, and also said that we would develop these plans to expand the role of postal workers.
We've just got to read you very briefly what Ofcom say, Dave. Ofcom says while it will publish options for how the postal service might need to change, it would be for the government and Parliament to determine whether any changes are needed to minimum requirements of the universal service. Now, the Prime Minister says there will be no change on his watch. Do you believe him?
I believe that the Prime Minister acted in a political way yesterday. I think he's less supportive of the postal service and more worried about his own personal postal bag, what comes in, and the criticism that some of the MPs, particularly in the shires, might get if this change were to happen. So I think it was a purely political move in advance of, what we know is going to be a general election this year. So I don't think that's that debate to be taking place. What we want is a legitimate conversation across the UK, and we're going to come up with our own report. We're going to work with economists, we're going to work with industry experts, and we're going to come up with a vision for the future of Royal Mail that everybody can get behind.